YouTube, what's going on? It is Benino, Mr. Gino Benino, and I am going to quickly show you how I press a book. To let you know what's going on here, we have a Thor 390, which is in actually pretty good, decent shape. The problem is that it was stored improperly, which is a common thing, and as you can see, there's a spine roll here. And I don't really even call this a spine roll. What I think of when I call a customary spine roll, it's when somebody read this book and turned the front page around so they could hold it with one hand, and basically it kind of repositions where the spine is. What I call this is a box bump, and what happens is by putting this comic book, too many of them facing the same way, you get a thing where it naturally is a thicker along this end because you figure you've got 100 or more books that are in a box with somewhat of a little bit of pressure against them if they're pushing against other books. And because there's a staple here and other things like that, this doesn't have the same amount of give as the book does. So this creates kind of a bump here where this much of the book sort of has been pushed and this part of the book can't. So what you want to do, this dings a comic book when you bring it in for grading. So you obviously want to get rid of this. So what we're going to do is do it customary. I'm going to try to do this with one hand. So if it's herky-jerky a little bit, forgive me. Which is we're going to open it to the middle and we're going to find the staple. And usually you can kind of guess where that's going to be. And again, I would do this much more carefully. Typically, this is going to be our board that we use. This is a board that I filed down a little bit on the staple end. I just not filed it to a fine point, but filed it a little bit so it's a little bit thinner so it can kind of fit in there amongst the staple and get far enough in to where it does what it needs to do. So here again, we're going to try to find the middle. There's an ad, which is always fun to look and see what Hulk 181 and Spider-Man 300 and stuff like that was going for back then. It's a hoot. Normally, let's see. Yep, there's the staple. You can tell there it is. And we're going to put this guy in as such. And we're going to close this up. And you're going to want to make sure that there's board hanging out everywhere. Front, top, bottom, side. So you got board, got board, got board. All right. Now, you don't want to push this in so far that it rests either on top of or behind the staple, because then what happens is you're doing more harm than you are good, in that it's going to push the staple through the pages and create an indentation. That's not good at all. So what you want to do is kind of push the board right up to, but not past, the staple. And this gets a little tricky when you have modern books where the staples haven't been, the prongs haven't been pushed in real good. So you do have to kind of watch for that. Now, this is an older comic, so it is a candidate if one would like to do a steam bath, but it's not that serious. If you look, I don't know if you can tell, there's a little indentation. See right there by Thor's cape. Maybe I can hold it sideways. Yeah, see like a little dimple? Looks like somebody poked or something. Now that is a 0.2 if you're going to get this guy graded off. They call that a little bit of a cover indentation or dimple or what have you. So we want to try to get rid of that too, and I think we'll do that. Now, if this was a comic that had a bunch of spine ticks, we would put some other paper inside the first and second sheets, but this one doesn't. There's really no spine ticks to their main concern here is the way this was stored. We've got a little spine, again, a box bump. And again, I know most people call it a spine roll. I get it. We're on the same page with that, but it's, again, I just call it something a little different. So what I'm going to do is cut the video so I can do this with two hands, because it's a much easier thing to do with two hands. I'm going to make sure and position my board in properly. Then I'm going to put it in here. This is my press. I have one of these old grandpa presses. This thing was originally made for t-shirts. I love it to death because it does not have any parts that can break and bust and stuff. It's made out of actual steel and real metal, not pig metal, so it tends to hold together. My fear is the constant on-off, which I do quite often, is going to eventually burn out the heater. I do know that the heater on this, and if you look, the little light went off, so it is hot enough. I set it to about 160, 165. When the light goes off, that tells me that it's ready. The next thing I do is I'll take this and I'll position it inside here. I have a little bit of rice paper that I put on the bottom, and I make sure and brush it off and keep it clean, free from any dirt and debris and stuff like that. Then I'll place the comic in. I usually place it with the spine facing in because there's a little bit more pressure typically with that on that end, and that's really the thing, the end that needs a little bit more work. The next thing I'll do is cover it with a piece of I don't know what you want to call this, I guess release paper. This is the kind of stuff that you would put on a cookie sheet or whatever to keep cookies from sticking. You can buy it quite reasonably on Amazon or eBay or what have you. And it protects the book while also keeping anything from sticking to it. You do have to be careful and keep it clean, because if there's any sort of debris, if you have any kind of chemicals or anything like that that are stuck to the book, it'll sometimes stick to this. So you've got to be careful when you pull that off. And I'll put it in there, I'll close her up, and I will count. I'll actually set my timer for about 1.5 minutes. I used to sing a song, but my dog started looking at me like I lost my mind. So instead I set my timer to about 2 minutes. When that goes off, I'll come over here. I've got the whole thing set into this power block, and I'll just cut power. And then I leave it. What it happens in essence is it presses and pressures the book, heats the book, pressures it, and hopefully straightens it out correctly. And then it stays hot for maybe a couple hours, and then it cools down gradually. I'll leave it in a whole 24 hours. I leave it in the whole day. If I'm serious about a book and I'm not in a big hurry, I'll leave it in a good 24 hours, so it kind of then turns from a hot press to a cold press. And I'll leave it like that, and then tomorrow I'll take it out about the same time. It's about 6 p.m. here, and I'll take it out about 6 p.m. tomorrow, and we'll see the results. So once again, this is what's going in. We've got a terrible, terrible spine roll there. You can see again, you could take a marble and roll it right down there, and it would go right in the gully. And then in regards to, we've got an indentation exactly there by Thor's cape. And other than that, that's really all I can see. The back, let's see. The back, there's a couple little things too, it looks like, but I may have to treat those a second time. And there's also, if you look, I don't know if you can tell, there's going to be it looks like there's a little bit of a crease right there, and that should press out as well. If it doesn't, what you do is you turn the book around, do the same thing. Actually, there's some things if you can see it in that light, see these little dippy divies here? So there's about 4, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. And there may be some at the top. Usually when there's one, there's another. No, it's not too bad there. How about the top here? Not too bad. So that's what we're up against. So once again, keep this in mind. I'm going to turn this back on, and we'll see our results tomorrow. Same bat time. What we're trying to get rid of is that spine roll. We're trying to get rid of the little ding in his cape, and we're trying to get rid of the dings in back. So next time you hear me, we will be done and ready to look at the results. All right, guys, how is everybody doing? It is now the 20th, Saturday, and it has actually been, I was going to get this out at 6 o'clock at night. It's actually midnight. Just a busy day. Had a convention to go to, so it's been in here a little longer than it normally would. The first thing to do is make sure that everything comes out quick without any issues. Sometimes it likes to stick, especially if you've got some chemical stuff. And there's our result. There's no longer any sort of spine roll. And if we look closely at Thor's cape, There's nothing, no dent, not a doggone thing. I'm very happy with the results. This was kind of a tricky book too, and I'll tell you why. There was a funny staple. There's a staple that was, I'll show you in the back. See that staple right there? So you couldn't really push the board as far in as I would like to. You know, I mean, it came, when it hit that staple, it came to a stop, and then at that point, you couldn't go any further, and my fear was it was going to create like a little bit of a mini dent here, but it didn't, so I'm very, very happy with that. But once again, that is a flat comic. I'm very happy with the results. It looks like it just came off the rack, literally. So that is it. That is how pressing works. Once again, I would have put paper in had there been any spine ticks or anything like that, but if there's not ticks, I don't mess with that because it can create a problem if you don't push the paper in all the way. It can make like a little mini issue. So there's the result after a nice press. And again, what I'm very happy with is Thor's cape. There's not a doggone thing. No, that little dimple came completely out. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Happy hunting. Gino Bonino, be out.